So I'm lucky enough to be here today with Saira, who's another one of our USC alumni, graduated in 2014 with a major in PR and a boatload of minors, I think, in communications, marketing, and creative advertising,
Correct.
if I'm correct.
Yes.
So Saira's here to talk about her professional experience since she's left USC and hopefully provide a few little tidbits and advice to students as they move through their own journey into the professional world as well. So thank you very much for coming today, Saira. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with why you decided to come to uni in the first place. I mean, was it something you knew you always wanted to do? And along with that, why sort of the communications, marketing, PR area?
Yeah, sure. I always knew I wanted to go to university. I can't remember ever making the decision. It was just always a thing.
Just assumed.
Just assumed, yeah, by parents and teachers, and it just knew it was going to happen. I was actually the first in my immediate family and extended family to both go to university and graduate.
Like many of our students here.
So that was quite daunting, but also very exciting and quite a privilege to graduate.
Why was it daunting?
I think it was daunting just because I didn't really have that family connection to go to and ask for advice about assignments and lectures. You know, my parents went to year 10 in high school and then moved on and started their careers. So formal tertiary education was something that hadn't really been seen in my family before. So I was kind of...
So you made the jump?
I made the jump, yeah. But it didn't really feel like a jump. It was more just the next stage. It was always finish year 12 and then go straight to university.
Yeah, fantastic. And with communications, public relations, marketing, why those particular areas? And were those always your interests?
Yeah, so they were always my interests, but to be quite honest, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do or what I wanted to study. So I came to an open day here at USC when I was in grade 12, and I had a free space on my schedule, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'm studying PR, you should really go check out the PR session." So I thought, oh, okay, I've got nothing else going on. So I went in, and I remember the presenter was talking about Apple and managing the reputations of brands and how exciting it all was, and I was just sitting there blown away thinking, this is what I want to do. I never even knew it existed up until that session. So then it was a case of, do I study a Bachelor of PR straight, or what do I do then? And again, as I said, had no idea what I wanted to do, and realised that dual degree was an option for me. So I decided to go down the route of a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Business dual degree.
Good combination. I'm a little bit biased towards marketing. You know, we kind of see PR sliding in under marketing a bit, but I'll let it slide for this chat.
I just find that they fit so well
They
together,
really do.
and I really think that I benefited from that final decision. It was an extra year of study, but it did mean that I could combine all of my passions, and I majored in PR, but then I could minor in marketing and creative advertising and communication studies. So it meant that I got all of those little bits and pieces that do fit together.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. How important do you think that was, that sort of interdisciplinary skill base you're sort of building up, or knowledge base you're building up?
I actually think it was really, really important. And now being in the workforce, I really see the benefits of it. Had I done straight public relations, I would have missed out on the basics of business, management, accounting, ethics, all of those really important subjects that you need to understand to fully understand the strategy of an organisation, and then understand your role and how it fits in. And on the other side, had I just done straight marketing or straight business, I wouldn't have had that creative, newsy sort of side of public relations, which I find really important in my role. So
it's a really good balance. And in chatting with you just before, you had some quite unique experiences while you were here at uni that from what I picked up, sort of shaped who you were unexpectedly.
Yes.
Can you tell us about a few of those, such as your time volunteering with conservation, that sort of stuff, which is obviously way outside of marketing or PR?
Yeah, very unexpected, but while I was studying here at USC, I worked part-time at Australia Zoo. So I was there for a total of 6 years, and I was really promoting the conservation side of Australia Zoo and Wildlife Warriors and the conservation projects they do around the world, without ever having really understood conservation projects themselves. So it started with volunteering at the Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital, literally cleaning poo out of koala enclosures.
Why did you decide to volunteer? What pushed you to do that?
I'm very driven and motivated by understanding what I'm working for, and I think you need that understanding in order to be passionate about something, and you need passion to do your job well. So I started volunteering so I could really understand the nitty-gritty of what it was that we were doing and the impact that we were making. An opportunity came up while I was studying one summer semester break to volunteer over in South Africa. So I travelled over there, I didn't know anybody, and I volunteered at a conservation property doing conservation transects, so literally measuring out 10 by 10 squares of bushland and measuring blades of grass and counting the birds that we could see. And it was that sort of, that really detailed work that was so far beyond anything I'd ever imagined I would end up doing, that really led me to get a greater understanding of what it was I was doing back home, back at the desk behind the computer.
So you've really got to kind of put yourself you know, in the lens or in the shoes, and I love the words you use to describe it, nitty-gritty sort of
Yes.
way, to get an understanding, to be able to exercise your discipline skills. So you gathered these sort of various little pockets of skills even as you were going into your throughout your university degree, and even if they weren't necessarily part of your discipline. And can you talk about how that sort of shaped you and how that made you a little bit more well-rounded, if it did that? Or?
I think it made all the difference to my professional skills, my professional skill set and back at work, because I understood what it meant to sacrifice your time and your energy and your loved ones, even being away from my family for that amount of time, to really try to make a difference as best as you could. And that, I think, came through with my work, because it meant that I was able to write about these conservation projects and write about the impact it was making, having actually experienced it. And
A deeper knowledge and understanding.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to something you said sacrifice.
Yes.
I think that's, again, and sacrifice, I think, in a positive way.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's a good point of view for students to take on board, is that it's, you know, magical jobs and great jobs and things you really want to do, they don't just happen. They require a lot of hard work and sacrifice. Sometimes I use the analogy of surfing a lot because I like to surf, and a lot of surfing is paddling.
Yes.
I mean, 95% of surfing is paddling, you know. Only 5% is riding the wave. So I really like that word sacrifice. Could you just expand on kind of what that meant to you and how that could be useful for students?
Yeah, well, for me it was really, I felt really honoured and humbled in the fact that here I was still at university and still studying, being paid to promote conservation work, and I felt like I wasn't actually doing as much as I could be. And I could see the hard work of volunteers and people who had literally dedicated their life to changing the world and conserving wild animals. And it was really that I need to take a step back here, pay my own way to go over to a foreign country.
You paid your own way.
Paid my own way, to be without friends or family, didn't know a soul, and to get up at the crack of dawn literally and work all day covered in mud and dirt and trying not to get malaria and really getting in there and getting my hands dirty. And for me it was only a couple of weeks out of my life, but I met people and that's their entire livelihood. So it was really me giving back, and having gone through that, I now feel a little bit more grateful that, you know, I can just wake up and catch a bus to work and sit in an air-conditioned office. But
So that was kind of something I wanted to ask you too. Yeah, how did that develop your character? You said it gave you a bit more gratefulness and that sort of stuff, but what else did it do for you as a person that you've taken with you?
I think it for sure made me more resilient to the conditions and the environment in which I'm working. And I understand that there is a world outside of an office with four walls and how to perhaps be strong in times that are difficult or uncomfortable, whether mentally or physically, and know that what you're doing and what you're working on, it's got a positive outcome at the end.
So resilience building in a way that you know, sort of taking things on a day-by-day basis, learning to be a little bit uncomfortable, but all really with kind of bigger picture in mind.
Yes. And that's a really big thing for me, is I need to see the big picture and I need to understand the strategy behind something and how all the wheels fit together and how everyone turning is actually going to make a difference in the end. I simply can't work not knowing how what I'm doing is going to impact on the bigger picture. That's what really drives me.
That's good. It's good perspective. And bringing that big picture concept, if we zoom out and and you look back on your uni experience, and you look back at the bigger picture of your uni experience, what are some of the main skill sets and knowledge bases that you think, I mean, you've sort of touched on a few here and there, but if you kind of had to summarize a few areas that you think your uni degree really helped you with, that now you can actually realize that as you moved in the professional world, what would those areas be?
One of the biggest benefits I gained from my degree here at USC was not so much the technical skills. Of course, they're important, but more so I've now come to appreciate the soft skills that I picked up throughout my 4 years studying here, those people skills. I'm an introvert by nature and have always preferred working by myself and on individual projects. So when it came time to do the dreaded group assignments at uni, I really didn't look forward to those at all, and they were a struggle, but I pushed through. And now, working in the professional sense, 99% of my job is group work. And you're always going to come across people that are difficult to deal with or might have a different working style to you, and unfortunately it's a part of life. So having to work in a group setting whilst at university from the very first semester, at the time I didn't enjoy it, but now I appreciate it so much more, and I'm so thankful that it actually was part of that journey, because otherwise I'd be floundering around at the moment. Yeah.
Most definitely, that's something that's come out quite a lot, is having those people skills, and not only being able to work with those around you, but also understand clients that you might be working with and what their needs are. So it's just kind of along with people skills, almost like an emotional intelligence. And
yeah, definitely. And in my current role, I see a lot of that. So I currently work for Surf Life Saving Queensland as digital media officer. So I manage all of the social media channels for Surf Life Saving in Queensland. And emotional intelligence is a really big part of my role, because I'm working with such sensitive materials at times. You could be talking to a lifesaver who has just performed CPR on a patient for over an hour, who unfortunately may not have made it. And to have the emotional intelligence to be able to sit with that person and talk them through their experience whilst thinking of the outcome that I want from a work point of view, but also understanding what they've just gone through, is a really big thing, and that's a really important part of my role.
That's pretty amazing. That almost gives me sort of goosebumps thinking about having to do that and having to be so cognizant of the people around you. Yes. to record that experience and to have that on records. Yeah, really amazing. Kind of speechless actually, thinking about it. But if we come back, I want to talk more about your current role in a few minutes. But if we come back to that transition point from uni going into the real world, what were you thinking and feeling at that time in your life?
Okay, so I officially finished study at the end of 2013, and I had a full-time job at Australia Zoo working in the PR team there. And I had my internship coming up, my PR internship, which was over in Malaysia, working with Bornean sun bears at a conservation centre. And I decided to give myself a break. I'm a very hard worker, and I think that was the first time in my life that I actually took a step back and said, I need a break.
How did you know you needed a break?
I was very, very burnt out. I was very tired, more so than usual. It had been 17 years straight of education whilst working at the same time. So I gave myself a month or so off over Christmas and New Year, and then I went to Borneo to complete my internship, which was an amazing experience. And then I came home and it sort of hit me that I've now finished uni, I've finished my internship, and I've quit my job.
All three things at once.
Yeah, now what? So those couple of months between finishing my internship and waiting for the graduation ceremony at USC were filled with me sending out job applications left, right and centre. Melbourne, Sydney, flew to Sydney to have an interview, had phone interviews for Melbourne, interviews in Brisbane, and I was getting nowhere. I was getting continually knocked back and rejected. And
what were you feeling like during all that?
It was a real hit in the face, to be honest. Up until that point in my life, I'd been an overachiever almost. I'd always gotten where I needed to go, and people expected big things from me, and suddenly I was still living at home without a job, and my savings were dwindling away, and I was like, what have I done? And then a colleague of mine that I used to work with let me know that a position had opened up at Surf Life Saving Queensland, and I applied for the role and went down for an interview, and it went really well and they offered me the job. So I graduated at USC on the Thursday, had my graduation ceremony, and then straight into it on the Monday the following week, full-time work down in Brisbane. So it was very much, I'd had that break, but then as soon as I got that graduation cap, it was full on from there.
And what did you learn about yourself when you were going through those sort of 3 months of putting applications in, having interviews, like sort of getting a little taste, oh, this might work out, and then it doesn't? What did you learn about yourself?
Again, it was a lot of resilience that came from that, and a lot of character building, to have gone from someone who, looking back, I expected the world. Everyone always told me the world is your oyster, and I just kind of expected things to come to me. And those few months of uncertainty and rejection and disappointment were a real eye-opener as to, hang on, maybe I was a big fish in a little pond before, but now I'm in the ocean and I really have to work hard at this. And I made sure that I kept writing in a journal, and I'd write down how the interviews went and what I learnt from it. And
that's a good habit, nice tip.
Yeah, made sure to ask the interviewers questions while I was in the interview, and when I got the inevitable phone call saying we really liked you but there was someone else, I would ask for feedback on my interview. And now looking back on those interviews, there's no way I would today go into an interview like that. So
yeah, I feel the same. I look back and you sort of give yourself a bit of a quiver with how you handled questions or what you said, or it's just but it's all learning.
Yeah, even down to what I wore or how I held myself, just those things that you can't learn without having experienced them. So whilst at the time it was heartbreaking, I feel like I'm a stronger person because of it.
And I think that's been another thing that sort of popped out along these interviews as well, is that things don't just come to you. You got to go out and get them.
Yes.
And if you don't get them, learn along the way how to get closer to getting them.
That's it. And if you make a mistake, take it on the chin, admit that you made a mistake, write down what you did wrong, what you should have done, what you can learn from it, and then just vow to work hard to make sure you never make that same mistake again.
So coming into your role, which this was your role right out of university, was this a dream job for you? Was this a stepping stone job? What were you feeling about that, and what was it to you?
So my first role at Surf Life Saving straight out of uni was Media and Communications Coordinator, which was very similar to what I'd been doing at Australia Zoo while studying. And it was a dream job in the sense that it was a public relations job in the not-for-profit sector, which is what I'm quite passionate about. Was it my exact idea of what I wanted to get into? Honestly, no. I wasn't from a surf life-saving background. I'm actually not that big of a fan of the beach, to be honest. So for me, it was more just the fact that I was putting the skills that I'd studied for to good use for an organisation of such an iconic standing and has such a great reputation across Australia and is known throughout the world. So it was a dream job in that sense, but it has sort of become a stepping stone as I've now realised what exactly about the industry intrigues me and interests me.
And you've got an interesting way of developing your interest in I guess, in being intrigued by an industry. Again, from what we were talking about earlier, can you tell us how you sort of got a feel for the industry when you first started working for Surf Life Saving Queensland?
Sure. So I first started working for Surf Life Saving Queensland in April of 2014, which is just before the end of the volunteer patrol season. So it was quite good in a sense that I came in during winter time, so I could kind of have a few months.
Bit of a slower time, yeah.
Find my footing. It was busy with other projects, but not as busy as the summer months inevitably become. And it wasn't long before I realised I knew absolutely nothing. They say chucked in the deep end, and this was literally but chucked in the ocean deep end. I knew nothing. I didn't know what any of the acronyms stood for. I didn't understand how the surf clubs worked. I didn't even know the difference between a lifeguard and a surf lifesaver, which now all comes completely naturally to me. And I realised that the only way that I was going to ever be able to do a good job of my role was to become a surf lifesaver myself. So throughout that winter season, I trained for my bronze medallion, felt like a fish out of water, ploughed away trying to swim the necessary length in the right amount of time in order to qualify to then go on to the beach training sessions, learnt how to ride a rescue board, how to rescue somebody out of the water who may be unconscious, how to pull them back to the beach, learnt CPR and all of those requirements, and yeah, passed and got my bronze medallion, which was very, very unexpected. That's the last thing I ever would have thought I would have been doing. And then I patrolled over that season, that 2014-15 summer season. So patrolled down on the Gold Coast, also up here on the Sunshine Coast, and really ingrained myself in that side of the movement.
And so what did you learn from it?
I learnt so much from it. I learnt so much about the people, the clubbies, the volunteers who are out there every single weekend giving up their time to give something back to their community and to make sure that people are safe. I learnt so much about the equipment, the processes, the way that it works, why people do what they do, you know, down to why we've put the flags where they are. I learnt so much about the geography and the ocean, and just it was so much.
So would you say, even though this has nothing to do with your job role, how important would you say it is to understand, to the best of your capacity, the other roles within the organization?
It's absolutely invaluable. I feel like in my role I sort of need to be a jack of all trades in terms of understanding all of the little roles and how they fit together, and it comes back to needing to understand that entire strategy of the organisation. SLSQ's vision is 0 preventable deaths in Queensland public waters, and there's a myriad of ways that we're trying to achieve that, and I need to understand all of those little ways in which we're trying to achieve that in order to promote it effectively online. So as well as patrolling on the beach for that season, I've taken part in a number of other initiatives, from the Breaker Beach to Bush program, which goes to regional schools and gives presentations on surf safety talks, to a number of leadership camps, to the Summer Surf Girl fundraising program, to the annual Awards of Excellence recognition dinner. I try to put myself out there in as many different pockets of the organisation as possible.
And I'm sure the organisation is very appreciative of that, and that's one way of you know, demonstrating your commitment to the organisation and your employer ultimately at the end of the day. And within that, again, a larger theme that I'm sort of starting to see emerge is the need to constantly learn. It's not just about learning in your particular area, but it's about it could be completely random skills or knowledge bases, such as where do you put the flags and why do they put them there?
What kind of weather means what kind of beach is the best beach for swimming today? Is it a northerly facing beach or is it an easterly facing beach? Right. All those little bits and pieces, and I think so many students and people in general will think once you finish school or graduate from university, that's it, your learning's over, but that's not the case.
Just the start, really.
It is. I'm learning something new every day, and quite frankly, I'd be really bored if I wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a really nice segue into your current role. So can you describe to us just briefly what your current role is, and then how what you learned from your university degree has helped you in your current role, and how you're continuing to learn in your current role, apart from what you've already touched on?
Sure. So my current role at Surf Life Saving Queensland is Digital Media Officer. So I manage all of our digital channels, including the website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, things like that. And to be honest, while I was completing my degree at USC, social media wasn't even on the horizon. It wasn't part of the coursework.
And that was only how long ago?
And I graduated 4 years ago.
That's it? So that's how much has changed. So your job almost didn't really exist?
Well, it didn't. When I started at Surf Life Saving Queensland, I was in a media and comms role, and there wasn't a dedicated social media person. And I very quickly identified that gap and that we were missing out on a really integral part or way of communicating with the broader public. And when I brought that up with my boss and the management, we devised a strategy, again, based around that whole organisational strategy. And this new role was actually created for me to step into and to make sure that we were utilising all of those channels to the best of their ability. So whilst I wasn't learning the technical social media skills throughout my degree, it was the basis. It was learning how to think analytically and critically, and how to research and how to weave stories together in a way that worked from a business sense as well as a communication or a PR sense.
I really like the way you framed all that, because we have a lot of students who I think want to learn those skills, and they're very important skills to learn, don't get me wrong, but the foundation as to the why.
Yes.
You're using those skills
Yes.
and how you might go about that with certain groups of people or certain target audience or whatever. That's more important. The technical skill set itself can be learned.
Yes.
And in fact has to be constantly relearned with how quickly.
And that's the thing, like those platforms have changed so much in 4 years. 4 years ago, there was no such thing as an Instagram story. Snapchat didn't exist, and now we have a Surf Life Saving Snapchat account, and we use Instagram stories. And so you do have to be constantly learning as the technology around you is evolving. And that's certainly something that I've seen a lot of in my role.
Yeah, and that's again another great segue into what have you seen change most in the industry? Is it the technology behind everything?
Technology, it would have to be social media itself. 4 years ago my job didn't even exist, and I always heard that. We were always told that at university, you'll end up in jobs that don't exist.
Right,
and I always used to think, how is that even possible? And now I understand. So it's everything from the platforms themselves to new platforms, and if a new platform does come along and it's being touted as the next Facebook or the next Instagram, it's taking a moment to think, well, is this suitable for our organisation? We can't just jump on every single social media platform out there. Who's our target audience?
Again, it's the foundational thinking, the why.
The key demographics, who is most overrepresented in our drowning statistics? It's certainly not the people that we see on Facebook. So how can we communicate to those people who are receiving our messages in the hope that they will then influence the actions of the people that we're trying to save? So it's all of that strategic, analytical stuff going on in the background. It's not snapping a pretty photo of a sunrise at the beach and throwing it up with some hashtags. There's a real strategy behind it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the big things I always, in terms of talking shop and marketing, that is it's not just about being on social media. It's about being on there in a meaningful way with a purpose.
That's it. And the way that I like to describe it is that I see my role as setting up a virtual set of red and yellow flags on the beach.
That's really cool.
I'm not a lifesaver anymore, but I go to work every day and get out of bed knowing that I can set up that virtual set of red and yellow flags and help keep people safe in my own way. And I like to tell people that different people are on different platforms for different purposes. So something that I post on Twitter is not going to be the same as what I post on Facebook, the same as what I post on Instagram. And a lot of people don't quite understand that, because the other tricky thing with social media is everybody's on social media in some form or another. And therefore, because people have their own personal social media accounts, a lot of people will come to think that they are experts in social media, whereas social media for organisations is very different to personal. So that's and that comes back to soft skills again. Being able to explain to somebody respectfully and in a meaningful way. Might be the CEO, it might be the president, it could be a clubbie who's been a member of a surf club for 50 years. Explaining to them the why behind the way we're doing things, and seeing that flash of recognition in somebody's eyes when they finally understand what it is I'm trying to do is magic, because it means, yes, I've gotten through to someone, and then it's potentially someone who can feed in great content from the front line. I work in an office in Brisbane, but we've got thousands of kilometres of coastline across Queensland, so it's great to be able to reach out to the lifeguards and the lifesavers and even members of the general public through our hashtags and curate all of that great content.
And that's the beauty of the digital red and yellow flags. They can be as wide as you need to make them, you know? So no, that was a great analogy what you provided there. So there's always times that are very challenging in our jobs. And can you discuss kind of, are you always perfect? Is it okay to fail? Are you going to get fired for failing? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so growing up and even through uni, I was a perfectionist, and I had to do things to the absolute best of my ability, even if it killed me. And now, being in the workforce, I realise that nobody is perfect, and it's silly to strive to reach that level of perfection, because we are human and we will make mistakes, and that's okay, because that's how you learn from it. So I've seen my boss make mistakes and we laugh about it to this day. It might be a rogue tweet that goes out on the wrong account, or it could be even just a post on Facebook that has a typo in it. Back in the day, that would have torn me to pieces, and now I understand that there's a thing called edit and you can fix things. So one of the toughest things about my role, and the industry in particular in emergency services, is that we are very reactive. As much as we want to be proactive and push out proactive messaging, at the end of the day, we are we're controlled by the ocean. What the ocean throws at us is what we have to deal with. And also with humans, we can never predict the actions of other people.
Humans are not rational people, are they?
Right, no. So I never know what's going to happen when I step through the front doors at work, or not even stepping through the front doors, waking up and reaching for my phone, what's gone on overnight, what's breaking right now. So that reactivity, at times in situations of crisis, we have a lot of tropical cyclones up and down our Queensland coast. Dealing with that in the heat of the moment, you might have 10 things going on, crises left, right and centre. Knowing how to take a deep breath and step back and look at things logically and rationally, and understanding that once we hit publish on a post, it's out there, and we then deal with whatever happens afterwards. It's a real skill to learn, and it does take time. And
you're not going to get it right every time in the beginning.
Get it right every time.
And there'll be times in the future where it's not going to be right every time.
And I know that, but I learn from that. I'll make screenshots of things that I've done and write notes around, should have changed this, could have done that, next time do this.
Again, another very good piece of advice.
Yes, so you can't run away from your mistakes, and you can't try to erase them or hide from them, because what's the point of making mistakes? Otherwise you can't live your life that way. So learning from your mistakes is a really good thing to do.
Again, very, very sound advice. Coming to the, we've talked about the challenges of your job and the challenges of the professional world. Working with an organisation like Surf Lifesaving Queensland, what are some of the perks or really cool things you get to do because of your job and the organisation that you work for?
Well, I get to work on the beach, so that's pretty cool.
A lot of people all over the world will be very envious of that.
Right? We're so lucky to have that as our backyard, and to be able to travel along the Queensland coast and see the differences from, down from Rainbow Bay, which is one of my favourite beaches down on the border, up to Yeppoon where the water's flat, and even up north where there's stingers and crocodiles to deal with. It's just such a diverse environment to work with. But I think one of the biggest perks would have to be the people that I work alongside and the people that I get to meet throughout performing my role. The volunteers, the clubbies, the lifeguards, the staff, everybody is so, I don't even know how to describe it. Lifesavers are of such good stock. They're all such genuine people, and you can tell that they're doing what they do because they love it and they have a passion for giving back. And it's just, I can't describe it. They're amazing people, and I've made so many lifelong friends through my work and through volunteering with Surf Lifesaving, and it's just such a fabulous organisation.
And I think that's a great way to end our conversation today, is the lifelong friends that you've made through your experiences with people and through your experiences with the organisation that you work for. So thank you very much, Sarah, for taking your time today. I really appreciate it, and I think our students will gain a lot of benefit from listening to our chat today, so thank you.
Thank you very much.